Lucas Jones. Look at you.
I only drink through straws now.
I like it. Right, let's go. Well, you finally got your wish. You finally got a podcast, mate. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a long time coming, mate.
I like the way you messaged me and asked for my expertise when I have none. So that's quite promising.
No, you're underselling yourself there, I think, because you've got experience. You got everything we need. That's why I came to you.
Thank you.
And look at us now.
You're looking pretty well. We're what 8 or 9 weeks through lockdown now. I think we're the last people to finally get a podcast, and as everyone else has done it a bit earlier than us. But we've I
know. Do you know? The annoying thing is, when I had the idea, it wasn't so mainstream, and now every other day,
I'm seeing podcasts have been mainstream for a while.
No, but you know what I mean. Like now, I'm seeing it every other day. And but you know, we've got our niche.
What's our niche? Is it your Wooding?
Just incredible expertise, experience in the game. You know, we both played at a really, really high level, so you know, you can't teach that.
I think that that gets us onto the name then. So we've called ourselves the Step 9 Podcast, which is actually doing ourselves a little bit of a disservice, seeing as I think Step 9's like 5th Division Saturday League in Parks football, but I think we play at level 9 or what it would be in the pyramid, and about Step 5 of non-league. But you're going to Australia, and I'm thinking about not playing next season. So I think it's actually going to be Step 0 or something.
Just retired.
just washed up. At that point, we can just
definitely washed up. Yeah,
we can just play your goal for Burgess Hill, which was
we've been washed up for years. Well, I've got that, and that's available on request to anyone who wants to see that. So just give us an email, and we can send that over to anyone who wants to see that again. Or just scroll through my Instagram feed. You'll see some goals on there.
You just pop it off on your Instagram stories every so often.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got to go for the anniversaries. You know, every time anniversary of the game.
Yeah.
You know, anything,
any
excuse to whip it out. My one moment in glory.
I like the little Lord Farquhar look as well.
Well, can't go to hairdressers, can you?
I think it's hard because they're saying 4th of July really for haircuts, and to be fair, I'm looking pretty dishevelled. I was gonna make some sort of an effort, but
but Ollie, you've had that haircut since you were like 10. This it never looks any different.
Someone said that to me recently. You haven't changed, but what do you do with it? I can't really do too much of it. I'm not exactly blessed.
You've never been a short back and sides either. Like you've always. I don't know what you call it.
Bit of an asymmetric haircut.
But yeah, I mean, you've always looked like that.
Thank you, mate. I don't think that's a compliment, but
I'm like Bex in this like duo where I've gone with the different haircuts. The only one I haven't gone with yet is skinhead.
So yeah, the mohawk have you?
Mohawk, not yet. But that has to come after skinhead, doesn't it?
What, do you know the timeline? I mean, I'm not too.
I'm not specifically familiar with it, but I'm not afraid of anyone.
Well, just on the name before we get going, when I told my old man, my dad, that we were doing a podcast, I told him the name of it, and he said, "What, have you got something to tell me?" And I was like, "It's not exactly what you want to hear." And it turns out Step 9 is apparently like one of the most important steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. Out of the 12 steps, apparently.
Is that like forgiveness?
Big one. So, I think...
that's quite funny.
I don't think it's quite like that just yet.
Well, you never know. We might tap into a whole audience there expecting some, guidance in their struggles, and all they get is us chatting.
Well, and you're not much of a drinker either, so I don't think that's going to work too well.
No, yeah, not massively.
They're going to be majorly disappointed.
Are you still much of a drinker? You love a Guinness?
I haven't. I've got a drink next to me, but I've also got water, and I thought it'd be more professional if you drink the water.
What's your drink? Because I was thinking this, I was like, should I bring a bottle in that?
Well, I know you've been overthinking this seeing as you were going for the tux look to begin with, which I had to talk about.
Well, yeah, I was dressed at 7 a.m. this morning and realised we weren't filming until now. So
you've been waiting all day for me to finally make myself available, which I appreciate. I do appreciate that.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you're a lot more busy than I am, so when something like this comes around, it's been in the diary for weeks. I'm sat here waiting.
We've established how this is very much your baby, so I like that.
It's our baby, you know.
It's an honour. It's an honour. Let's get going. I think the main topic that's obviously on everyone's lips at the moment is Project Restart. We're recording this on Sunday evening, and I know that the meetings in the Premier League have been on a Monday recently, but this week it seems that they're going to do another meeting as to how to expand the training on Wednesday, and then on Thursday something a bit more concrete about a start date. I'm just a bit confused, really, that we're back training, obviously, the Premier League, and we're seeing the Bundesliga being played that we're going to get onto in a bit. But surely it is going to restart now, because why would you go back to training and then eventually be like, well, no, we are actually going to, cancel it, or obviously not null and void it, but cancel it to some extent?
Well, this is my thing, actually, that I've been thinking about kind of over the last few days, is that now more's happening, and it just seems like a bit of a mess. You've now got players who are coming out and saying that they don't feel comfortable, and I'm pretty sure that they're not going to be alone in thinking that. There's going to be many others, and it just seems like there's becoming more reasons why it could get null and voided in the end, due to just the uncertainty.
Well, it's interesting that you think that, because I personally, I feel completely different, in the sense that, so they've released earlier today about the second set of testing, and 2 more people have tested positive. I think I heard something earlier that may be to do with Bournemouth, but for me, this is a positive thing. It's literally a good thing that people are getting coronavirus, because although that sounds like it's a terrible thing, obviously a lot of people have lost their lives due to this, it's good in the sense that it's knowledge and we know where we stand. So yes, 8 people have now got it, but thousands of people have not got it, and that's what we can work with. I just feel as though so many clubs are happy with the proposals, but it's just the minority, the loud minority, that aren't happy, and I can understand why. I mean, what did you think about Troy Deeney and his comments? I know they're last week and they're probably a bit old now for everyone, but I'm just interested what you thought about it.
I mean, it's hard to not agree. If he's got it was about his child, wasn't it, who's got breathing problems or something, and if he doesn't feel comfortable, then I think he's in every right to not have to go. And it kind of relates back to Danny Rose's comments about guinea pigs and all that, and maybe the wording wasn't quite right, but there is a lot of uncertainty around it, and for me as a fan of football, of course we all want to see it back and we want it to be back to its best, but I don't see how that's going to happen. I think if these if the Premier League goes back and you've got players who aren't sure, they're not really confident in what's happened in the virus and all that kind of thing, and then you've got no fans, you've got it's not going to be the same.
It's not going to be the same, but at the same time, and I think I found out from watching the Bundesliga that it's better than nothing, in my opinion. And these are, incredible circumstances. And obviously, in a normal situation, playing behind closed doors is a punishment. But at the moment, I think it is right that we try and continue. I'm very wary about the financial aspect of the whole thing. Even clubs down the bottom of the league, you get your TV rights, you get your money from that, and that's, guaranteed for 3 years. So when that happens, obviously you spend that money. But if this league isn't finished and then there's problems with restarting next season, that could be a big problem. I just want to go back to the comments. And I listened to Troy Deeney's, the podcast he was on with Tony Bellew and Eddie Hearn. And I just thought it was really interesting because he spoke really candidly about it. But he's so calm. And he's so relaxed about it. And I also listened to Danny Rose. Obviously, they weren't his original comments, but he was on Robert Snodgrass's podcast with Chris Boyd. And once again, he's really calm about the whole thing. And Rose actually said at the beginning of it, he's actually looking forward to coming back. It wasn't clear. I don't know if he's got particularly much humour. He's probably a bit like me, but I couldn't really tell if he was joking.
Yeah.
When the press are getting these headlines, they're making it into this massive thing. And that's massively
part of it as well. I think the whole media, anyway, I see a headline, I don't really think too much about it. And I mean, there was an interesting article that was released earlier on today about what chairman was it? Chairman of one of the clubs, saying that up to 40 or 50 Football League clubs apparently were at risk of going bust through the virus, things like that. And maybe it's not so severe as 40. I've seen another article where it was about 5 or 10.
Yeah.
Which, for me is more of an issue than getting the Premier League back. I think that it's down to the Premier League and the government as well to ensure that the kind of the longevity of football is more looked after than the immediate starting the Premier League again. And I think nothing has been said in that respect on how they're going to make sure that these clubs from the Premier League all the way down to League Two are going to be looked after and going to be able to survive this and then come out on the other side. And for me, that's worrying more as a fan because, I couldn't care less whether the Premier League starts again or not, to be honest, now, as long as everyone else is kind of catered for and the whole football kind of culture around this country continues as it was. I don't want to come out and have the Premier League restarting, but we've lost a couple of clubs, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's why really it does need to get going, certainly from the Premier League aspect. I mean, yeah, League Two, I don't still think it's been completely confirmed that it's going to be cancelled. I don't think it still has been, but I know League One are meeting this week. But you'd like to think this is going to eventually result in a bit of a reshuffling and more money being sent down to the Football League, just because after what happened to Bury, we can't really face having like you say, potentially another 50 clubs folding. Just going back to the Prem, I think we're kind of in agreement that it's not going to be perfect, but it kind of needs to happen. And I just found it very interesting that Brighton came out today, I think it was in the Daily Mail, and it turns out Lewis Dunk and a couple of the players went and spoke to Paul Barber, the chief executive, because Brighton have been very open throughout this whole thing. They've acted really well, been holding press conferences regularly with the manager and the chairman as well with Barber. But he basically said, look, stop giving us a disservice. We're happy to play and we're happy to fight and stay up, which I thought was really admirable because there's a cynic in me that it's Watford. And I personally, the facts are there. Mariappa has contracted coronavirus and Deeney is well within his rights to feel like that. But whether it's unweighted points per game average or the weighted version, Watford, even though they're 17th from one place out the relegation zone, stay up in both tables if the league was to finish now. Now, I'm not saying that they are, bending the rules or lying basically about this. I don't think they are. But wouldn't it be a bit more, I don't know, relaxing almost to you if it was an Everton or a Crystal Palace who are definitely up and they're like, no, we don't want to play? Because it seems to be the teams that have got the down the bottom. They've got a lot to lose. No one wants to go into the EFL at the moment. We're seeing all, wage caps and everything like that. It's just a bit of a cynic that would suggest that, right? I mean, it's a strange situation.
Yeah, but it's quite a widespread opinion, I think, because it's easy to come across in that way, where it is just those people who are speaking out about it, and maybe that's because they're the ones who are speaking out about it. It is a difficult situation, and I think Jamie Redknapp made a point on Sky the other day about it being unfair if the league was to restart because of these players that might be missing due to that. Liverpool fans will obviously want to play it out. They'll want to win the league, and I think everyone else is also a bit against that. And I think that's probably a part of it, where those opinions, and I'm not saying the players, but from the fans, I think, and also a reason why I think it's heading towards maybe actually being null and voided is the comments were that, if Liverpool were to win the league, obviously they wouldn't be able to have their parade, the crowding, they'd have a form of it. But, a club that hasn't won the Premier League for that long, their fans, they're not just going to sit inside and think,
oh, they're gonna turn up.
It's not just, that was good, I'll have a beer.
Yeah.
Nice. they can't even stop people going to the beach, let alone coming out to celebrate a Premier League title. Do you know what I mean? And I think if it comes down to decisions where they think, okay, well, we can't ensure the safety of people when 20, 30, 40,000 people at least are going to gather. You know, and that's another reason why I just think it's a little bit kind of heading in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I just personally feel as though the coronavirus, obviously, the curve, as it were, is kind of flattening a little bit, but people are very tuned into the fact that the infection rate's a lot lower. We seem to be going steadily in the right direction. And I think that may just tie in with where we're at the moment, because I know they've got to play you. And as far as I'm aware, obviously the fixtures are going to continue as they would do, obviously. So they've got to play you, which would have been on a Monday night originally at Goodison. So I'm sure they'll win that. And then they'll lift the trophy against Crystal Palace in the next game, which would technically be a home game. But as you see at the moment, as you rightly say, the beach, we saw the photos from Southend over the weekend or last week, whenever it was. I just feel as though because we seem to be making progress as a country, then potentially there will be a bit more of a relaxed attitude towards this, especially by the time this game is played, because the Premier League want to restart on June the 12th. It's very unlikely that's going to happen, probably the 19th, if not a week after that. So this is 2 rounds of fixtures later. We could be in July by the time this game happens. And if we're continuing the way we are at the moment, that inevitable gathering of people might not actually be as serious as maybe it would have been a couple of months ago. I'm just thinking from the perspective of the Premier League, because you're right, that's why neutral venues was on the table, and which is now off the table, because it's inevitable that these people...
Yeah, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Do you think that? That's very...
I don't think it would have made a difference.
See, I agree, but I've had a lot of people tell me that they disagree.
Unless it was some kind of top secret location and, you know, you don't find out until it's happening.
Yeah.
Then, you know, all of a sudden it just pans and you're at the Britannia or something. Some random stadium in, you know.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can't prepare for a Premier League football training in social distance settings and with groups of 5. So it's going to take, that's where we're at now. So it's going to take 3-4 weeks until they're going to be ready to play. And whether they actually start playing before that, maybe they will. But kind of, I think Gylfi Sigurdsson said it the other day where he's like, you know, for me to be match fit, I need another 4 weeks. And, you know, I'm sure that he's not in the minority when he says that.
He's not the fittest, is he? So it's probably not a surprise.
I mean, I'd need a year, but...
I saw your pass last week.
God, I know.
Bit of one-on-one coaching. I think you regret doing that now.
More of them sessions. But, you know, which I just think there's just too much uncertainty. And, I mean, I don't think it would have made a difference. Really.
Yeah, well, I think it's down to the Premier League, like I said, with this meeting, or the 2 meetings that are taking place this weekend, to get a bit more certainty. But in terms of the training, I know Sean Dyche has said, by and large, pre-season at this stage, the first week, would kind of be the situation they've got at the moment. You know, kind of social distancing, as you were. Obviously not called that, but it's by and large where it would be at anyway. And if they're going to try and progress from that, and I think this is quite a good way to move on to the Bundesliga, because I think that we've both been watching it, and leaving the Premier League there, it's just ongoing. It's just one of those things that is going to continue going, and in my opinion, continue going until they finally, you know, find a solution. And it's interesting with Spain that they've only just announced they're going to come back on June the 8th, and that's no time at all. So you never know. The Premier League could finally decide a date, and it's June the 12th, which is very soon.
I think overall, anyway, the reaction from the UK over the coronavirus whole scenario was a lot more delayed than it was in Europe anyway. Cool. So that, you know, it's going to be even more delayed because of the higher peak and everything like that. So it's going to take time. Yeah. It just depends on how much time it might
Exactly.
be.
But something that has obviously restarted, as I was saying, is the Bundesliga. And like I said, I know that you've been watching it. I've watched far too much, considering that I haven't really had too much of an interest in it beforehand. And And I'll be honest with you, as I think we've got conflicting opinions here, I've genuinely enjoyed it. And something that I have really noticed is the difference in quality. This will sound very obvious, but the difference in quality between two good teams playing against each other and two weaker teams. But I think because there's no crowd there, there's no fans, the commentators are pretty slow. They're not like radio commentators where they're constantly informing you. You're watching it and you're making a lot of stuff up for yourself. You're really paying attention. And I watched Bayer Leverkusen away at Mönchengladbach yesterday. And I just thought the standard was so high. I was genuinely very impressed with Bayer Leverkusen. And then you compare it to, say, watching Cologne against Mainz last Sunday, where guys getting the ball on the halfway line, he's trying to turn out, he goes to pass it, and it just like hits his foot and rolls like 2 yards away. I'm thinking that's something I would do. And you're I know it's the first weekend back and all that, but
I had exactly the same opinion. I mean, you're saying about the two top teams, but when Dortmund played Schalke last weekend, I thought, okay, I'll watch it. And I thought it was so poor. Schalke, and it proved again today where they got battered at home. They're so poor. They were getting played through the lines with ease, their midfield. And I was just very disappointed. I think the standard was lower, the sloppiness, the sharpness wasn't there. Obviously, that's to do with the virus and the time off they've had, which is fair enough. But, for me, it wasn't, I wasn't gripped to it. I wasn't thinking I could watch this all day long, which I did today. But
exactly. So that's interesting, though. So you weren't enjoying it, but you've still sat here today on a Sunday. And I know you'll probably tell me you've got nothing better to do.
I enjoyed Leipzig's game a lot. I think they're the best of the bunch. I think Bayern are far superior than anyone else. And then I think that that Leipzig are the second best. And I think today that puts them 3 points behind Dortmund. Dortmund are obviously playing Bayern on Tuesday night. And I think that, Leipzig are probably the best of the rest, in my opinion, that I've seen.
So what have you thought about the whole, obviously, lack of fans?
I liked when they played it out loud, through the speaker. I think that actually did make a lot of difference. And I think the games, there was a couple of games that I watched that didn't have it. And I think looking back, I could really notice the difference from the players in terms of their tempo and how they played because of the sounds. Because, I mean, when they're playing, they're not going to be looking around at all the fans. They're just hearing it. So I think that definitely makes a difference having it played out loud.
I don't know whether they are doing that or whether it's just a broadcast thing. I thought it was more,
Really?
I don't think I'll be honest, I don't know. But something I will say is like I said, watched probably as much as you. I haven't really noticed. And even if, so what game earlier was the sound? Was there crowd sounds?
Definitely in the 5-0.
I watched the whole game and I didn't notice. So it kind of shows you how distracted I was. But
I think, and in the 2-2 game, the Dusseldorf Cologne one now. Yeah.
Well,
there definitely was. But
I think for me, it's just obviously been welcome having something back on TV. And I think we've going forward, obviously today's podcast is just a bit of a chat, really, just, as we getting used to this. But we'd like to do a kind of ones to watch feature from the Bundesliga. Obviously, it's going to be continuing, going to be on BT every week. And I like Leverkusen, but I really like Kerem Demirbay. I just thought that I watched him on Monday night against Werder Bremen, and he got the ball. Bellarabi plays a lovely little no-look pass into him, and he sits the goalkeeper down, chips it over him. And I was thinking, fucking hell, that's unbelievable. That, he was so calm, so composed. The commentator goes, that's his first goal of the season.
That's what I was going to say to you. I mean, have you looked at his stats?
Yeah, well,
very underwhelming.
Exactly, but he's the type of player where he's just so classy, all left foot. And it's funny that I'm picking him out because, to be fair, Ginter did an unbelievable block. He's Demirbay, it's fallen to him. He's chested it. He's tried to pop it in the empty net, and the guy's come from nowhere and cleared it. But then it hit the post in the second half, came out to him, and he skied it. And I just found it really interesting because he's not deep lying. He's quite advanced, but he's this really classy player, and he gets close to the goal, and he just becomes the most ineffective player. And I quite like that about him. But I just generally, because I don't really watch the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
And it was,
I mean,
see something different.
an interesting fact about him as well, because he was involved with the kind of the sexist comments towards a referee a few years ago.
Okay, right.
Which I found, and one of his punishments was that he had to ref a women's youth game
Okay.
because of it. Thought it was quite funny. So
Is
he just had to rock up to some.
Who gave the punishment? Like the German FA?
I don't know. It just said that he then refed a youth women's game.
I quite like that if they introduce that in England. So we've got it wouldn't even be that though. Like you do it for all types of things. So you get players having to do it for like under 12 matches. Not even like say it's like an actual like professional team like Man City. Just go down
the park.
Yeah. You got to join in.
Yeah, for sure. Another player, Ollie, that you said you were impressed with was Campbell from Leipzig.
Yeah.
Was involved in a really nice goal today for them.
I've got to say, mate, I was watching them, and I didn't watch him last week. I watched Dortmund, and I think it made a big difference because you got him and Sabitzer playing centre mid, and they're like the perfect new generation footballer, aren't they? Both got their man buns, which I think you're well on your way to doing.
Well,
buzzing around in midfield. I just thought that he was, before he had the goal that was disallowed, and
a very nice finish as well,
which for me is never offside because he's
picked. Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it?
The keeper was never going to save it. But yeah, so I just thought that before he was even involved in that, he's buzzing around. He's so busy. He's winning the ball back, starting things. Genuinely very impressed because, as well, when I've been watching this, I find out more about players because I'll watch them in the Champions League or the Europa League. I'll see them there. But like I said, I don't really tend to watch them. So even Timo Werner, I was just really interested because I'll be honest, I thought he was more of a standard number 9. Holds, quite central, not hold up, but kind of comes alive a little bit. He was playing left back. He was making clearances when it was given offside when he was in his own area. Did he track back that far? It's just interesting to be able.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I think the same about Havertz as well, and I think that probably is just more of a kind of a German football thing where they have these kind of more fluid, kind of forward lines, and I think there was the same with. In the Leipzig game, he was playing up front with Yusuf Poulsen. Obviously, I think he had a really good game, set up 2, scored, and he's Danish. So how could I not say that?
Is that your player then? Is that the one that you want to look out for?
Not really. No, not particularly. I mean, I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon of Havertz because I just think, for someone who's 20 years old, he's played 112 times for them.
Mate, I was genuinely very impressed. And as I was saying before, I didn't expect him to be a kind of false 9, leading the line kind of player. So again, that was very interesting.
It'll be interesting to see where they end up. I mean, obviously there's numerous rumours around Europe that everyone's interested, obviously, but Liverpool, Timo Werner, maybe. Do they need him?
I mean, it's one of those that it's quite easy to try and factor in players to pretty much every team. Trying to say, will he join there? Because obviously with Werner, it sounds like getting for about 55 million, and he'd only want to go to Liverpool this year. But it's all just paper talk for me. I never really like to think about it so much, and that's probably why, as a Newcastle fan, I'm struggling with this situation so much.
Well, I mean, money is no object, mate.
Well, at the moment, it's still is, but it seems as though we're getting closer, as it were.
I mean, it's exciting for you, must be, no? After kind of a lot of, many years of just pretty average, nothing to shout about.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, certainly. But I just think that I don't think Newcastle are going to be the force that everyone thinks they're going to be, because although they would apparently be the richest team in the Premier League, Financial fair play was obviously introduced on the back of teams like Manchester City and PSG being owned by states like we will apparently be.
Yeah.
And it kind of does, Arsene Wenger was talking about this, it kind of protects the already rich clubs. Although it stops them spending astronomical amounts of money still, it stops other clubs joining them. So with Newcastle...
It's going to take years for them to, or multiple transfer windows for them to be able to get to that level.
And I just think that a lot of people seem to think that they're going to go on this ridiculous spending spree. And, you know, you've been linked with Gareth Bale, Philippe Coutinho, Koulibaly at Napoli. I just don't see any of that happening. So I'm excited. It's good. You want to see the back of Mike Ashley, of course. You want to see a progressive club. But the thing I'm most looking forward to is stuff like the training ground and obviously the surrounding areas, St James's Park. That doesn't come under financial fair play. So if you want to be doing that, then the clubs can basically do whatever they want and it's not going to come up. And they say they want to invest in that, really help regenerate Newcastle as a city. And it sounds a bit boring because most fans will be like, oh yeah, I just want to finish in the top four. But for me, that's going to be the most important thing.
That's, you know, that again, it comes back to that longevity, doesn't it? You need that infrastructure in place in order to be able to grow a club like that. And I mean, obviously, Man City kind of seemed to happen overnight, really. But I think for a big club like Newcastle, who have been around, and it's not like you don't need a new stadium, you know, things like that. You know, you've got that in place already. So I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, no matter who's in charge, I still feel as though we're only going to be able to sign replacements for the same type of position. So obviously a number 9, there's no doubt with that. I think obviously Joe Linton's had his well-documented struggles this season. Probably like a right winger to free up Almiron to come into the middle. Whether that's Lazaro signing permanently, I don't know. He hasn't really played enough since he's come in January. And then 2 fullbacks. So really, it doesn't matter if it was, sounds weird, Mike Ashley or, you know, the Saudi Arabians coming in. Because, yes, you'll be able to sign better players in those positions. But really, unless you're going to completely rip up the whole team, you're not going to be strengthening the core, really, because you've got 4 or 5 good central defenders. The midfielders are good, especially if you keep Longstaff, Matty Longstaff, whose contract's up at the end of the season. So, you know, it'd be very interesting to see if we do bring in top quality players. And I think the number 9 will be, you know, the biggest element of that. But at the moment, like I said, I just want to be competitive. And I know a lot of players are happy. Shelby said about it recently with Steve Bruce. So I think that'll be the most interesting thing is if they do come in, whether they get rid of Bruce, who I know isn't the majority of Newcastle fans' cup of tea, but I am a fan. I don't think he's done anything wrong this year. And I think if Rafa had done what he'd done this year, everyone would be singing from the rooftops about it. Or if we are able to bring in Maurizio Pochettino or someone of that ilk, which I think is incredibly unrealistic, but who knows?
I mean, you say that, but Everton have just got they've just got Ancelotti, and I think there's been an age-old Twitter poll. I think who's the bigger club between Everton and Newcastle, but they are of that same type of caliber of club, and I think that Pochettino said that he's open to clubs outside the top 6. You know, I don't think it's too unrealistic now that you've got this investment. There could be that kind of that real path to making Newcastle kind of a well-respected club again. Not that, you know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think it's right that you compare our 2 clubs with each other, although we haven't been at Everton's level, although Everton's level was a bit worse off than it potentially should be, but we haven't even been at that level in years. So if I can just have a club where we're not looking at behind our shoulders all the time and looking at, you know, potentially going forward, that's all that matters for me, really. But I would just like to quickly talk about the fact that it is, you know, the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, which will be our backing, because it's rightly got a lot of press. A journalist in particular, Miguel Delaney, who works for The Independent, has been on it a lot. Not I would like to, I'm almost saying a one-man crusade, but I think that does him a disservice because he's just picked up a story and really run with it. I first came really aware of Saudi Arabia when the boxing was meant to be held over there. I think, remember when AJ was going over, and there was a lot of people weren't very happy about that. And I think with the whole takeover situation, there's no doubt that Saudi Arabia have problems that we in a Western society deem to be incredibly negative, and rightly so. I just personally feel as though it's difficult when you're a fan of a football club to be asked to hold them to higher regard than, say, the Premier League or our own government. So we have, as a country, there is a strong link between here and Saudi Arabia. And it's a shame because this takeover, for a lot of fans, has almost become a little bit tainted, because I'm sure you've seen on Twitter the whole #cans movement. I mean, that is literally just Newcastle fans being themselves, having a laugh. They can't wait to get rid of Ashley. That's it. But someone like Miguel Delaney is saying, if you're going to be celebrating this takeover, then you're celebrating sports washing, which is what they refer to buying something like Newcastle United and then trying to improve your image in the West. And it's just a shame for me as a fan, because if it gets ratified by the Premier League, and this test has been going on since mid-April, this has been going on for a very long time now. I think it's the most extensive, I can't remember the word for it, but test that the Premier League are going to be carrying out on owners, a fit and proper persons test. If this is then eventually approved, I just hope that we just let it go for a little bit in terms of the media at large and just allow it to kind of see how it plays out. I mean, obviously, Saudi Arabia, as I've said, have rightly got a negative element in terms of the way that we deem them to be. But I'd like to think that sports washing, although it's a thing, I'd like to think that this is also a country trying to improve themselves. And I'd like to see it in a positive light like that.
I mean, I definitely agree with that term of sports washing use. I mean, they've now, I think, got 2 golf courses on the PGA. They're looking at getting an F1 race as well, and then obviously the boxing. And it is. And I looked, and there is only one other club in the whole of the football league, including the Premier League, that is owned by Saudi Arabian person, and that's Sheffield United. And it was funny because I thought, is there any relation between? So obviously the story goes that the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who is the chair of the sovereign fund, so that he apparently ordered a killing of a journalist. So that's where the story goes. So I looked, and the guy who owns Sheffield United, if I'm not mistaken, which I could very well be because the names are all incredibly similar. So when I was like clicking back and forward to see the relation, it was confusing the life out of me because the names are so long and similar. Yeah. But if I'm not mistaken, there is some sort of relation there. Well, and I don't remember when they took over there and whether there was anything about it, but.
No, well, it's very interesting you bring this up because, well, firstly, there wasn't anything about it. Secondly, as far as I'm aware, they are not like officially related from what I've seen. But you will find this very surprising. The man who is involved with Sheffield United is now no longer involved with Sheffield United. Right. As of just over the weekend, it was finally announced. It turns out he actually relinquished control back in October. But these were just reports, and Sheffield United have then come out and said that he is actually still involved. So it's one of those things that's incredibly murky. I don't know if you saw a slight tangent about Swindon Town at the weekend, who are apparently partly owned by Gareth Barry, and have you not seen this? It's a fantastic story where Gareth Barry obviously came through at the Albion at Brighton, And he came through with this guy called Michael Standing. And Michael Standing and Gareth Barry joined Aston Villa at the same time. And it was kind of thought that Michael was the better player. And Gareth just came along with him as, you know, he's good enough, don't get me wrong, but we'll see how he develops. Michael's the guy, trying to keep him happy. Didn't work out for Michael, string of injuries, etc., etc. Obviously, we all know what happened to Gareth Barry, but they've stayed in touch. They're best mates, and Michael's actually his agent. Anyway, he's invested in Swindon Town in 2013. But what's happened? Well, it's now with the courts. So, you know, probably shouldn't say too much, but I highly doubt they're going to be watching this. So
well, they might.
If they're one of our 7 viewers or listeners, I'll be very surprised. But no, it's basically Lee Power's a guy at Swindon, and he is trying to say that it's 50% of the club. It's like a £7.5 million investment, or half of that with the 50%. Michael Standing is trying to say it was him, which it sounds as that's more plausible, because Lee Power's trying to say that money, or part of that money, was, you know, propped up by Gareth Barry. But, you know, he's still playing for West Brom. So you're not allowed to do it. And that's why I bring up the tangent, is you're not allowed to be involved with another club. It happened to Paul Scholes similarly when he became Oldham manager for a very brief amount of time. He had to step away from his duty at Salford City. So that's why the Saudi Arabian thing is very interesting, because although it's not quite clear. The whole thing is not quite clear. And I think it's kind of an insight as to why this thing has taken so long, the test, because you're trying to look into things like that. I've heard they're not related. You've heard they probably are. But you can kind of understand why it has been so extensive.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that they didn't get they didn't get any bad press whatsoever with Newcastle. He
was the guy at Sheffield United as well. I think his stepbrother or something like that assassinated one of the kings as well, and that's why.
Is that an allegedly you're going to have to throw in there?
Well, that was the allegedly, because I don't know if they're exactly stepbrothers, because his dad had another kid, and Ollie, the names are so long. They are crazy long, and like they look so similar. And I was on Wikipedia, and I literally was like, I don't know what's going on here. So I'll just say it's his stepbrother.
Saudi Arabian, the prince is now watching this as well.
I know, and I'm going to get it now.
Allegedly, just to make that.
This will be my only episode, because I'll be dead by morning probably.
Nice to play into a stereotype there. That sounds very
good. Actually, that's not good.
Well, I mean, you know, I just think that we'll probably chat more about Newcastle in the future, obviously, because it hasn't gone through yet. It sounds like it's going to be next Monday, and everyone said that for the last 7 Mondays. So I'm not quite sure if it is ever going to go through, but it sounds like it will to me. I mean, you know, it is what it is. I'd like to say, mate, I have very much enjoyed today's first chat. I've enjoyed it. May well be. But I think we're going to obviously progress this a little bit more, and, you know, throw in a couple of things and whatnot. So should we throw in our first feature, our first foray into
interactive?
I like it. I mean, so if people are listening to this, you will have to have this read out to you, because we kind of catered for our viewers, even though, like I keep on saying, it's highly unlikely we want to have too many of them. I'm just trying to find how to share my screen. I think I'm doing it now.
Are you going?
Thing laid out in front of you.
Yep.
Lovely. Right. So I've kind of given you a little bit of a heads up here. Basically, throughout lockdown, everyone, as I'm sure you're all well aware, has been very bored. But this is the Wikipedia game, which we've called it, because it's literally looking at a list of clubs that one player has played for in their career, and then trying to work out who it is. So for anyone listening, I'm just going to quickly read it out. Starts in 96, 97, where he's at Sporting, but doesn't play a game. He goes to Arsenal in 97, playing 25 times, no goals. Then moving on to Southampton for 2 years, 14 games, 1 goal, where he also went on loan to Fulham and scored 18 times in 39 games. Then joins Fulham for 6 years, from 2001 to 2007, playing 166 times, scoring 26 goals. Then from 07 to 11, West Ham, 91 games, just 2 goals. Not quite sure what happened there. AEL for a season, 7 games, Orlando Pirates for a couple of months, and then Chesterfield from 2012 to 2013, where he plays 12 times and scores no goals. I'll just let you know as well, obviously the name's not there, but the country's not there, and there's no position either, nor youth career or prospective management career. So, Lucas Jones, do you know who this player is?
Is it obvious, do you think?
I quite like this feature because it has the perspectiveness of being incredibly boring for either watching it or listening to it. Because someone may just see that and go,
Yeah.
it's that player. And then you wait until you finally manage to get it right.
I know, and that could be ages.
It could. Are you completely stumped?
Yeah, I am. I mean, 2001 to 7 at Fulham. I mean, I don't.
So that's in the Prem, pretty much, all those
it is.
years.
I was quite young.
Come on, give me your thought process. What position are you thinking?
I mean, I'm thinking it's a midfielder,
Okay.
maybe a defender. Not too many goals, but then he scored 18 in 39 and
Yeah, so he had a purple season. That must have been an 18-month loan there or something.
Yeah, so I'm thinking midfielder. Went to West Ham and then to America. Who's AEL? Is that Greece?
Yeah, I think it's some team in Greece, yeah. Or potentially Cyprus, actually.
It's 7 games. I mean, that's quite insignificant.
You're giving up. You're giving up.
Danny Murphy, I don't know.
Well, Danny Murphy, the famous Arsenal player. I like it. Right, you giving up?
Yeah, go on.
Luis Boamorte.
Right.
Do you remember him?
I remember him, but I would never have got that.
See, I didn't think that was that hard.
If anyone got that, fair. So, can you see that? So, for those who can't see, it starts in 1970.
Oh,
Tottenham Hotspur. No, but it's a famous person. You will know them. Went on loan to Montreal Olympique. Played 10 times, 2 goals. Then came to Middlesbrough in 1972. Was there for 6 years. Played 176 times, 22 goals. Went on loan to West Adelaide, a cracking side. 6 appearances there, 1 goal. And then most famously, 1978 to 84, he was at Liverpool for 247 games, scoring 38 goals. He then went to Sampdoria in 84, played 56 times. Yeah, Sampdoria. Scoring 8 goals, and then finished his career at Rangers in 1986 to 1991, where he played 50 times, scoring 3 goals. Oliver, thoughts?
It's Graham Souness.
Yeah, all right. What gave that one away? How did you know that one?
To be honest, I think the Sampdoria bit. I know obviously Graham Souness played for Sampdoria. A lot of games for Liverpool there throughout the late 70s, early 80s. It could have been anyone really. There are quite a lot of stalwarts during that era. Didn't know he played that many games in Middlesbrough, to be fair.
I mean, if I'd have seen that one, I probably wouldn't have had a clue.
There is no chance of you getting this second one, which is very...
Well, that's the same guy. Luis Boamorte.
There you go. So... Right. To read it out quickly, 2005, 2008, he was at Met, played 79 games, scoring once, had a season at Newcastle following that, played 30 times, no goals. 3 years at Spurs until 2012, where he played 45 times, scoring twice, with a couple of months on loan at Wolves during that period. From 2012 to 2017, he played for Norwich, where he played 105 times, scoring 4 goals. My curry's turning up. He's just left it, to be honest, and walked away. No rush. Anyway, Norwich, 2012, 2017, 105 games, 4 goals. Year on loan at Watford during that period, playing 11 times, not scoring. Season at Peterborough, 2018, 2019, 1 game, no goals. And he apparently is still playing for a team called Volos, where he's played 3 times and hasn't scored.
French defender.
French-born, I believe.
Right.
Not playing for Newcastle Spurs. That not doing anything for you?
2008. Definitely a defender, isn't it?
Yeah, he is a defender.
Oh, do you know what? No, I don't think I'll get the name.
Mate, this is the death of the new feature already due to your poor lack of footballing knowledge. I would love to know if people know who that is, because I think it's quite obviously Sebastian Basson.
Right.
Have you heard of Sebastian Basson?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, if you got that, fair enough. You probably get it. So this is two teams, 1971 to 1984. Liverpool, 340 appearances, 7 goals. And then 1984 to 1986, Sheffield United, 37 appearances.
I literally do not have a clue. Ian Callaghan.
He's known. You'll know him. I chose him because you'd know him.
No, it's not Mark Robinson.
Close. It's a bit... I mean, only 2 teams as well.
Mate, my dad was born in 1971. I mean, I'm not exactly up to date with 70s football.
No, neither am I. I don't know. I think yeah.
This is good, though. You have stumped me with something that's over 49 years old.
And also, I wouldn't have got it. So
go on, give it to me.
Phil Thompson.
Right. I mean, I didn't know Phil Thompson played for Sheffield United, so this is an informative podcast. I like that. It's good.
But now I know that I need to focus on the team, the 10s.
That is the end of the first podcast. I think we're not planning on having too much interaction, so we haven't even made a Twitter for it, which I think is probably the right idea at the moment. So feel free to message us on either of our own social medias, including my Twitter, which has about 75 followers, which I'm very proud of. All relevant, I may add, all relevant.
They are all relevant, yeah.
But no, look, this is like a bit of a work in progress. We're going to hopefully make it a bit funnier and a bit more fun in the future, because unless you're up for some top quality chat, you could have found that very boring, which I would completely understand. No, but in all seriousness, let us know what you think. We'd quite like to introduce a feature going forward about Step 9, as it were, and people's experiences of it, because obviously we got loads of stories from playing and whatnot, and I know there's so many lads that will be watching ours and listening in that have got stories as well. We'd quite like to go through a couple of them as well, because
we relish the feedback. You know, it's an infant. It's in the infant stage, and we'd love to.
It's an infant. It's good, mate, because it is your baby. I like that. This is your young baby. You want to see it grow. I like it.
Although it will be rather depressing when next week 3 people have watched and it's crashed and burned.
No, mate, I'm expecting that. You've got to build it from the bottom, you know?
Here we are at the bottom, and we'll catch you next time.
That's a lovely way to end.